Welcome to Inside the 12. It is week 6, and the Big 12 has 4 undefeated teams right now, but the conference remains wide open. Speaking of wide open, let's bring in our buddy, the quarterback Taylor McHargue from the road, working for CBS Sports, has a couple of college football games this week. Taylor, man, so excited to get into the teeth of this Big 12 week 6. What's got you excited?
I think what's got me excited is you see teams in this league that are moving up. You're seeing the strength of this league, especially in that top quarter of the league. And a couple teams that are off this week, Utah specifically, getting off the mat and bouncing back with a big win. But we got a couple, I think, under the radar games to talk about this week as well.
We also have Todd McShay on deck breaking down the Big 12 prospects, the best in the business. And also, we've got a red hot take from you on the AP Top 25 poll. We're looking forward to that. Let's take a look at the schedule. Of course, we are looking forward to this. Some huge games this week. One thing to note, number 25, Arizona State and Utah, who had a huge bounce back game last week. They are off, but we've got to start with a big one. Noon Eastern time on ESPN2. Iowa State and Cincinnati. Iowa State now down 2 cornerbacks. Jontez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper out for the season, announced by Matt Campbell earlier this week. But then you've got a Cincinnati team playing very well right now, a top 20 offense playing at home against a depleted Iowa State defense. Your thoughts?
Well, I think this is a huge opportunity for Cincinnati. And I think for people around the country that maybe aren't paying attention to this game, you'd be surprised to learn Cincinnati's favored in this game. And you mentioned the injuries for Iowa State, their corners being out. The structure and style of play that Iowa State likes to play, I actually think benefits Brendan Sorsby in the offense for Cincinnati. The only loss for Cincinnati so far this year was against Nebraska, and went back and watched a lot of that game. Nebraska played a ton of man defense against Cincinnati, and I think that's why Brendan Sorsby struggled. There were not a lot of open windows to throw into. For Iowa State on the other side, I think this is all about making Brendan Sorsby uncomfortable, trying to move him off platform, and then staying on the field on offense. Have to capitalize when they get in the red zone.
All right, we move to another huge game. And by the way, let's not forget about Rocco Becht, right? The most important position on the field. Iowa State's got a pretty good one there, so that dude is special. Look for him to have a big game. How about Texas Tech, right? 4-0. Houston, 4-0. This is a huge game. Texas Tech, though, continues to rise. Top 15 defense, top 15 offense. What do you make of this game? You and I had Houston early in the season. We knew they were going to be good. Did you know they'd be this good?
I think on the defensive side, they've lived up to expectations because they're also a top 15 scoring defense on that side of the ball. I think Texas Tech, this is another spot for them trying to, coming off the bye week. Houston this will be a big crowd for them, big atmosphere in Houston. For Houston, they got, in a lot of ways, I think, lucky to escape Corvallis with that win against Oregon State. It took them through overtime to finally capture a lead and a win in that game, in a game where they were extremely sloppy on the offensive side of the ball. But you know what? Sometimes in college football, you got to win ugly, and they were able to do that. Now, against this Texas Tech front, this is by far the biggest challenge that Houston has faced so far this season when they have the ball on offense. I think you're going to have to see Connor Wegman run the ball well, and they're going to have to lean on Dean Connors, a guy who has made his name as the bell cow back and a physical back. They have got to run the ball well, stay ahead of the sticks, trying to avoid those 3rd and long situations where the advantage goes to Texas Tech.
Top 25 talk. Iowa State, although they continue to succeed on the field, seems like they're in quicksand, according to the voters. I know you have thoughts on this. It upsets me, but you're the expert here. What are you seeing from this poll, and where is it deficient?
Yeah, I think right now the Big 12 is being punished in some ways because they didn't have teams that were high enough in the preseason poll, which, in my opinion, we should do away with the preseason poll. It provides no value. And for a team like Texas Tech, why is Texas Tech not ahead of Texas right now? Texas has a close loss at Ohio State, but no quality wins. Meanwhile, Texas Tech has been dominant. They go to Utah and completely dominate that team in a tough environment in Utah. I think Texas Tech should be a top 10 team. I think they should be ahead of Texas. And I think teams like LSU, I think that's where an Iowa State needs to be ahead of them. I think there are too many legacy rankings from the preseason. And some of the Big 12 teams, I mentioned Texas Tech and Iowa State, but even on the back end as well, with teams like BYU, they keep winning games, I think need to be a little higher than where they are right now. And I think it's because of where they started in the preseason.
Taylor McHargue still throwing darts from a game-breaking take to our game-breaking plays. Brought to you by Hell of a Good Dips. Game on, dip in. We start with hell of a good, and we continue in the second quarter. Arizona State. This is Sam Levitt, and who else? Jordan Tyson in stride. This keyed the comeback, a 57-yard touchdown. Arizona State, of course, coming all the way back to beat TCU 27-24. And how about Baylor? Sawyer Robertson. Woo! How about that? Kobe Prentice, all he does is score touchdowns. His fourth of the year, 15 catches overall. Baylor beats up on Oklahoma State 45-27. And then Kansas State, third quarter. Yeah, he's back. Check him out, Dylan Edwards, 166 yards on the day. This is 75 of those. He also, of course, had the touchdown in UCF. Woo, they are back with authority, winning 34-20. All right, when we come back, we're talking about Arizona State and Utah. Marquee teams in the Big 12 surging towards the top once again. Inside the 12 is brought to you by Hell of a Good Dip. Game on, dip in with Hell of a Good. Welcome back to Inside the 12. Pete Sousa alongside Taylor McHargue on location right now, getting ready for a couple of games this week. We bring the audience back, right? But we got two teams who may be, air quotes, back. Arizona State, the Cardiac Kids, right, and Kenny Dillingham. Do it again, coming all the way back against TCU at home. I love Kenny Dillingham. He says, we got guys that love to compete. And it's clear because they win those close games. And then Utah punishing West Virginia. A road win for Utah that really could have redefined their season. Taylor, your thoughts on these two teams as they both are working now on byes this week, but ready to compete for a Big 12 title?
Yeah, I think for both of these teams, we were all looking to see how do they respond after some adversity. For Arizona State, obviously, it was against Mississippi State and what was, in my opinion, Sam Levitt's worst performance of his career. And he bounced back in a major way. And the way that they beat TCU, hanging in the fight and closing out that game late, was extremely impressive. For Utah, an emotional, tough loss. You've got all the hoopla, big noon kickoff, all the attention that's on that loss against Texas Tech, where they really were not the more physical team. And going to West Virginia, that's a tough place to play, and they dominated in that game. I think it proved to me these are both still championship caliber teams, and it's very rare in college football that you get through an entire 12-game season without a blemish and go undefeated. At some point, you're going to face some adversity. I was curious to see how they would bounce back, and I thought they both did a fantastic job in the last couple of weeks, showing their resolve and getting a couple big wins.
Well, from two top-tier quarterbacks to your top 5 quarterback rankings. Folks love a power poll, and you've got your power rankings right here. Take me through your top 5 quarterbacks in this conference as it stands today in October, Taylor.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this since week 0, how deep we all feel like this league is, the talent at the quarterback position. I think right now, as we're seeing, you see a lot of statistics, you see some guys throwing for a ton of yards, but to me, winning still matters most. So I start with Sam Levitt, a guy that we just talked about. He got himself some momentum back after playing poorly against Mississippi State, and also that loss, I think, is aging a little better than we realized at the time. But Sam Levitt, I think, is the top quarterback in this league. And I know we talked with Todd McShay. I think he's got a chance to have a bright future in the NFL. Behind him, I'd go Rocco Becht, another guy that has won at a high level for a long time. And what he means to that team, when you think about a true MVP, most valuable player, I'm not sure there's a more valuable player to their team right now than Rocco Becht. In the third spot, I have Sawyer Robertson, who leads college football in passing right now, and he's really everything to their offense. Now, his completion percentage isn't great, but I think they're really having to lean on him for almost everything in their offense right now. So Sawyer Robertson, for me, I have in the 3 spot. Josh Hoover at TCU, I think, is in the 4 spot, and he's the guy, if you ask me, who in this group has the chance to move up the most. I think it's Josh Hoover, because at the end of the season, if you told me TCU wins this league and wins the Big 12, and your MVP of the league ends up being Josh Hoover, I don't think that's unrealistic at all. I think he's a fantastic player. Couple throws got away from him late against Arizona State, but he's still unbelievable. And in the 5th spot, I have Devin Dampier. I think his ability to run the football, and for Utah, how dynamic he is. Right now, I think he's still one of the top 5 quarterbacks in this league. And doing this is hard because we leave off a number of guys out of the top 5, guys like Baron Morton, guys like Noah Fafita that have played well, Avery Johnson, that are important to this league, that are great players, but they only got room for 5, and there's a ton of depth in this league.
And this is better than that top 25 poll because you actually watch the games. And I know when you watch the games, you like Brendan Sorsby. What have you seen from him, his explosiveness, his precision maybe, that has jumped out at you?
He's another one that's right there. And I think if this is a big opportunity when they play this week against Iowa State, if they go out and win that game and he plays well, all of a sudden you're talking about, we look at the top quarterbacks in this league, he belongs in there as well. I want to see Brendan Sorsby play well at home against a ranked team in a big spot. He didn't play well against Nebraska in week 1. This is another opportunity for him to prove himself in the moments that matter most. I thought he did a great job of that a week ago against Kansas. A little better opponent, a little better defense than Iowa State, and another chance for Brendan Sorsby to prove himself.
We are heading to a break, but when we come back, we put the dual threat quarterback Taylor McHargue on the bench, and we take the top off with Todd McShay. He likes to go deep. We go deep into the college football prospects in the Big 12. Welcome back to Inside the 12. I'm Pete Sousa, and it is October, which means that early returns on some of the Big 12 prospects getting set for the NFL draft are in. Nobody better, the best draft analyst for my money, to break it all down with than Todd McShay. Of course, Todd McShay, host of the McShay Show on The Ringer and Spotify, and also the McShay Report newsletter. So I want to get your take, just kind of check in. Sawyer Robertson's a guy whose numbers have been lights out. What does he need to do to continue his progress this season to maybe become a guy who scouts look at as a starter and not a backup?
Yeah, I've been really encouraged by what we've seen. And obviously with Baylor, you got to put points on the board. And Dave Aranda is such a great defensive coach, but the personnel has not quite been, what you would expect or what you would hope for Baylor. And so it's really been on Sawyer Roberts' shoulders, right? And I go back, we knew that was a good Auburn defense at the time, and to throw for 400 plus and to keep them in that game, even though the score didn't quite indicate it, was a real tribute to what Robertson and that offense has been doing all season long. I think Robertson right now is working his way into that day 2 status where you draft a player in the second, third round as a backup that you hope can develop into a starter. And that's coming a long way from a guy who, the national and Blesto grades, the NFL's teams kind of contract out these groups. They had Robertson as a late round prospect coming into the year. So he absolutely has improved his draft stock.
All right, I know the numbers are eye-opening for Josh Hoover. What does the tape say for Josh Hoover?
He's fun to watch, man. I mean, I think the whole nation got a glimpse in that Monday night game, right? In the opener against North Carolina and Bill Belichick, and that thing went south on our guy Bill real quickly. And part of the reason it did is because of Hoover and the way he played in that game. And they've, obviously coming off a tough loss this past week. But when you look at Hoover, he's just a junior, and I think he's gonna benefit from another year at TCU. But he certainly has gotten the attention of NFL scouts with his quick trigger, the decisiveness. You just watch him and it reminds me of all these Texas high school quarterbacks, right? It's that tempo, the way they play the game, decisive, balls out, moving around in the pocket, not necessarily have to be great athletes and runners, but just the ability to kind of extend in short areas and just move the offense, keep progressing it quickly. That's what Hoover does. I also like the Eric McAllister, the wide receiver they have. Not huge on NFL scouts' radars coming in the year, but he's 6'3", 205. He's a guy who's averaging 25 yards per catch, 13 catches this year, 3 touchdowns. So, and he's a former Boise State transfer. So we're seeing a lot of guys who are transferring into different places and having success in their final year. I think McAllister's a guy with Hoover at the trigger who's really improved his stock and could wind up being somewhere in those middle round ranges.
Well, you talked about the signal callers. How about the pass catchers? You did mention McAllister, but at tight end, Tanner Koziel and Michael Trigg could be 2 of the best at their position in the country. What are you seeing there?
Where'd this Koziel guy come from, Seuss?
Ball State.
I'm so used to our guy Steve Mensch on the McShay Show. Ball State, right?
Yeah.
I went and looked at the scouting services, like National and Blesto, that the NFL uses, the scouting departments. He wasn't on the list. He's 6'7", He's 250, 23 catches, and a huge target, right? And he can block inline. You can flex him out. It's been fun to watch him. And I'm really intrigued to see how the season progresses and if he can continue at this kind of clip. He's got a lot of guys racing back to the tape, going back to Ball State to try to figure out what the progression was in his career. And then you mentioned Michael Trigg. Man, he was at USC with Jackson Dart. Now he's transferred to Baylor. Through 4 or 5 games for Baylor, he's got 21 catches already this year. He's averaging almost 14 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. So Trigg and Koziol have been 2 of the fastest rising tight ends in this year's class. And even Joe Royer from Cincinnati is another Big 12 guy. So those 3 tight ends that I think are going to get drafted out of the Big 12.
How about guys on defense this year that folks aren't talking about in the Big 12? Anyone that you have on your board or you've been looking at and you're saying, man, this guy is making an impact, and he will on Sundays as well?
The Texas Tech guys have been fun to watch. And remember those offensive tackles I talked to you about from Utah?
Yeah, Spencer Fano.
First-round prospect.
Yeah,
Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu. Those guys, and they're kind of rotating. And it's helping because David Bailey from Texas Tech and Romello Height, both guys that, have come in and have been huge additions. They've combined for 6 sacks this year through 4 games. Texas Tech's undefeated. That team's legit, by the way. They're the best team in the Big 12. They might be a college football playoff team when it's all said and done. They gave those offensive tackles fits. Specifically, I thought Lomu, who's that left tackle, the right tackle is actually the higher prospect, Fanu. But those are 2 players that I think have really stood out. I really like this Dom Orange guy from Iowa State, defensive tackle.
Yeah.
About 6'2.5", 300+ pounds. Not the greatest pass rusher, but NFL scouts are really high on Orange out of Iowa State.
Yeah, he's a bad dude. All right, Todd, you're a bad dude. Where can people find you, and what's coming up on the McShay Show? Anything big?
You can find the McShay Show. It's on YouTube. Obviously Spotify and Apple and everywhere else you get your podcasts.
It is the party that everybody's going to. I saw the heads up. I got the alert that you guys were going live during the game, and there were like thousands of people in the waiting room.
I appreciate it. We have a lot of fun. We had a couple thousand people that hung for the whole night and just and responding with all their negativity. Probably had a couple cocktails, but it's a fun hang for a couple hours on a Saturday night.
Todd McShay, you are a fun hang, man. Thanks so much for spending time with us on Inside the 12.
You got it, brother. Talk to you soon.
That was Todd McShay, man. There he goes, one of the best in the business. We're going to step aside when we come back. We've got more Inside the 12. Some big games coming up this weekend. Taylor McHargue and myself taking a look at them. We are back on Inside the 12, and here it is, Week 6 football. Of course, remember, Arizona State ranked 25th in the country, and Utah are off. But, man, you look at this grid of games, there is so much to get to, and there's a couple we haven't touched on right now as we bring back in our Taylor McHargue with us on location, getting ready for a couple of CBS college football games. Taylor, West Virginia and BYU, we start here Friday night on ESPN, 10:30 Eastern time. BYU's defense allowing under 10 points a game. That is 4th in all of FBS. And you've got a quarterback now, a true freshman, Bear Bachmeier, who is certainly handling the pressure very well. What are your thoughts on BYU as they head into this game?
Well, I think a ton of credit is deserved to BYU and their staff in protecting their freshman quarterback. And I think it's a masterclass right now in doing exactly what you need to do to try to build a freshman quarterback's confidence. It helps when you've got a top 10 defense and the way that BYU is playing on that side of the ball. And when they have the ball on the offensive side, Bear Bachmeier, they're doing a great job running the football, staying ahead of the sticks, doing all the things that you hope to do with a young quarterback to where they're not putting him in obvious passing downs. And then they're letting him run the ball a decent amount. I think when he breaks contain, and even some of the design +1 quarterback run game, he does a nice job. There's a reason he wears 47. I think he's a true athlete playing the quarterback position. And this is another spot. West Virginia, ton of injuries. Going to Provo, that's a tough place to play. I think this is a big win for BYU.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. I think it's time to tip the cap to Kalani Sitake and Aaron Roderick, right, as offensive coordinator, for what they have done. And, of course, Jay Hill and the defense, those numbers speak for itself. But here we are again in early October talking about a BYU team that is ranked in the top 25 that we did not see coming. We move on to another huge game. This one has developed into a defining game for both of these teams, Kansas State and Baylor. That game, noon Eastern kickoff on ESPN+. I'll be on the call. I cannot wait. McShay just talked about the superstars playing in that game, right? Bryson Washington, Dylan Edwards being back, Sawyer Robertson, Avery Johnson. So much to like in this game. When you wrap your arms around it, what do you like the most?
Yeah, I think this honestly may be one of the most important games of the weekend in the Big 12, because I think these are two teams that this could be a season-defining win for whoever comes out of this game with a victory. For Kansas State, they finally got some momentum in what felt like really a get-right game against Central Florida. And now you feel like, okay, we've got a little momentum on the road at a place where Baylor, oddly enough, doesn't play great at home. If Baylor could come away with a win over Kansas State, you still have that outside hope of, can we still compete for this league? You're still trying to obviously get to bowl eligibility. Again, I think this is one of the most under-radar important games of the weekend in the Big 12.
Yeah, Dylan Edwards being back, I think that just puts a Band-Aid on so many things, or little things, right? He makes that offensive line look so much better. And now Kansas State at 1-1 officially. Remember that Arizona game, I call those randos, right? That is from the past, right? That's an old scheduling thing, so it doesn't count to the Big 12 standings. It's wide open, and Kansas State can be right there if they win this football game. Wide open, talking about the Big 12. All right, Colorado at TCU. At Saturday, 7:30 Eastern time on Fox. A bounce-back game, hopefully, right, for both teams coming off tough three-point losses.
Well, for Colorado, it seems like they have finally settled on a quarterback after what was a little bit of a revolving door through the month of September. But Caden Salter, it seems like he's settled in as the guy. And this is a big test, right? This is a spot going to TCU. I think this will be just like we asked, how is Utah going to bounce back against their loss going to West Virginia? And they did a fantastic job. That's what I expect out of TCU. It's a well-coached team. And for Josh Hoover, we talk about the quarterback rankings. I still think he may be overall the most talented quarterback in this league. These are the spots when you're going to need to lean on him most, trying to come back, trying to build some momentum and get a win at home.
Everywhere you turn, once again, in Week 6, it's the Big 12 on big networks in big windows. We can't wait to watch this week of college football. For my main man, Taylor McHargue, on the road, I am Pete Sousa. You've watched Inside the 12. Now go watch Big 12 football this weekend and enjoy it.